Hey everybody, and welcome to D365 Focus 2020, powered by Dynamic Communities. What an awesome time we've been having so far. Hopefully you guys aren't completely tired out by all of the really great sessions, and you can still have a little bit more brain power to learn a few more things today. So today, I'll introduce myself first. My name is Dustin Domerese, and I'm a Senior Solution Architect and Managing Partner with Dynamic Consultants Group. I've got 18 years or so experience in just the overall technology and consulting industries, specifically around banking and finance, manufacturing, some sports and entertainment in there, as well as some distribution, retail, kind of fixed in there also. I also have 15 years in just software as a service and platform as a service experience, doing things with Salesforce, SAP, IBM, kind of a lot of different platforms that I've worked with over my career. But right now, primarily for the last 10 years or so, been pretty much focused on Dynamics, and then of course recently more on the Power Platform stack of products. And kind of a interesting fact about me, I suppose, is I am a certified marriage and family counselor, something that has nothing to do with the nerdy side of Microsoft, but just more to do with how I can reach out to the community to try to help people that are in need. So with that, I'll also give a little bit of a shameless plug about the company that I'm working for right now. So Dynamic Consultants Group is a global Microsoft partner-to-partner consulting firm based in North America. We also have offices in California, Missouri, Texas, Belgrade, Hyderabad, and London coming soon next year. We're super excited about some of those changes that are happening to our office structure as well. We have over 50 partners in North America and Europe that we work with, and our primary focus is partner-to-partner consulting. So as an example, if partners are needing to stand up a Dynamics or Power Apps practice, or if they're just looking to augment their current staff, then we can jump in, we can help them with that, we can help them facilitate some of those needs that they may have. So what we're going to talk about today is how do we get people to use our system? As consultants, we spend a ton of time building just amazing things for people. Power Apps that do really cool stuff, Power BI dashboards that look amazing. We configure things, we develop, we do integrations, we build all this stuff, but how do we get people to actually use it? And this is so common of a question. I mean, I don't know how many times we've come into a company to ask what's going on in the organization, kind of doing that rescue analysis, just to hear them say, we just don't feel like anybody's using the system. And sometimes it's not because the system isn't doing what they want it to do. A lot of times it's just people issues. So what we want to talk about today is how do we take that next step? We've built an amazing system. We've done everything that we can possibly think of to empower the users. Now what? But the truth is, if you're waiting until after you've built everything to really start thinking about user adoption and how you prepare for it, then you already have lost the battle. You've got to start at the beginning. So a lot of what we're going to learn today is really basic, some very foundational, fundamental things that I think you can begin to incorporate immediately into some of your projects. And these are some things that are not necessarily world-changing, revolutionary items. I think you're going to see very simple things that you can use to take that next step to help your customers. But what we do is complicated. I mean, there's technology involved, there's complex business processes, there's so much stuff that goes into what we do. Unraveling all of the multiple organizations that a company could have. You may have organizations that are doing completely different things that you have to try to bring together so that they can make common decisions to fix a business problem or to implement a new system. There's also products that you have to worry about. You have to worry about potentially multiple languages. You have to worry about tons of locations. There's a lot of stuff involved in what we do, but none of that is the most complicated. The most complicated part of every single implementation is the people. And the people are the hardest problems to solve as a part of these implementations. Many times they have years of experience in their industry. You have employees that are potentially trying to make their mark on a new organization. Maybe they're brand new to come into a company and they're trying to find their way to figure out what their impact is. You also can just have bad habits and things that people have done for years that you have to unlearn to help them get to the point where they're even ready to learn something new. You can also have different personalities involved. The sales personality and the customer service personality and the marketing personality can really be completely different, and the ways that you go about tackling those are really sometimes completely different when it comes to user adoption. You can also just have company politics and egos that get in the way. And to completely say we're going to try to eliminate that altogether, we're just not going to have any company politics, that's just not going to happen. So we have to figure out how to navigate through those company politics to be able to still drive user adoption and find the best solution for the customer. And then you just have internal people that are jockeying for position inside of an organization, within their social hierarchies even within their teams. And some of those things are really what makes the most complicated projects. People are complicated, right? It's not just the project. They're the ones that at the end are going to have to be the result of the system. And that's really hard to make sure that we've got them engaged, that we're beginning to solve the problems that they need us to solve so that we can really make an impact, not just on a system, but on the people. That's the most important part. So if we can really begin to not focus so much on the system's certainly important. We have to know how to build integrations, and we have to know how to structure the Power BI report so that it'll do exactly what they want it to do. But make sure that we're focusing not just on the technology and the systems, but we're also focusing on the people. And you will see some of that natural user adoption happen. And natural user adoption is always the best. You want to build a system that they just can't stop using. And that has more to do with the way you engage the people and the way that you're pulling out requirements and doing some of those things that we're going to talk about in just a minute to engage those users and make it a better experience for them. So the first part of what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what happens before the project. So if you've started talking about user adoption whenever you start getting to the point where you're doing training and go live, man, you've gone way too long without starting to talk about it. You have got to begin talking about user adoption from the very beginning of the project. You cannot wait until kickoff to really be planning what you're going to do for user adoption. So first and foremost, everything that we're going to talk about today centers around this one thing. And so I'm going to give you 10 items to think about as you begin to progress through your change management cycle and through your implementations. That'll hopefully give you some things that you can begin to act on very quickly. So the first item that we're going to talk about is just change management in general. And everything we're going to talk about today kind of revolves around this idea of change management. So you're going to see a common theme as we go through it. But number one, change management, we have to make sure that we have a time for it, that we have budget for it in every single project. No matter how big, no matter how small, a portion of this project has to be dedicated to change management. So the other 9 things that we're going to talk about today, make sure you've got budget, make sure you've got time, and make sure you're just setting the precedent with the customer that this is going to be something that we're going to do as a part of the project. And you have to start that before the project ever begins. Change management doesn't have to be this mythical thing that everyone talks about and no one actually does. It can be real. And I'm going to show you some of the next things that we're going to talk about will be really easy things to get into place with your customers, and you can do it immediately. And it will really help with some of the user adoption challenges that companies face. So just kind of a shameless plug for my friend Andrew Welch. Andrew Welch, if you go to www.runwayview.com, you'll find some really amazing tools that's going to help your organization with some of the very principles that we're going to talk about today. If you don't already have any sort of change management or adoption principles in place in your organization, this could be a really great resource for you to get up and running. So check him out. He's got something called the Power Platform Adoption Framework that he and his team have been working on, and this is just going to be an amazing tool for you guys to use along with some of the principles that we're going to teach today. So let's talk about number 2. Number 2, throw a party. This could be one of the biggest game changers that you do in your projects. And that is make it exciting. When you kick off a new project, there is no time like that moment to capitalize on some of the excitement inside of the users. Yes, it's going to come with some anxiety. It's going to come with some fears about what's going to happen to my job. What are some of the things that I need to worry about? Am I going to have the right influence? All of those things are completely normal with your customers. But if you start with a party, everybody loves a party, right? And you can use that project and that kickoff to sometimes do some things that you would not have been able to do otherwise in an organization if you make it exciting and you make it fun. Sometimes we even will have t-shirts printed or coffee mugs or some other swag that we can give away as a part of the implementation that will really kind of make it exciting and kind of theme it. We've got a couple of customers that really like coming up with keywords, kind of Microsoft themed keywords that they'll use to kick off their projects, and every project will kind of have a code name. And that's just a really fun way to try to get people involved, because it's really hard to hate a system that has a cool name. Now, this is not the end. We have a lot of other things to do. If all you do is throw a party, you're taking a good first step, but it's certainly not the last result of what it is that you need to do. So, third thing, you have to make sure that you are identifying project team and identifying leaders for the project. And sometimes these leaders come from really unexpected places. It's not always the people that were involved in the sales cycle. It's not always the decision makers in an organization that will actually be the most valuable part of your project team. What you're looking for is you're looking for troublemakers. You're looking for the people inside of an organization that are always looking for the next cool way to do something. They may be looking to, hey, I've built this Power BI dashboard and I connected it to 2 Excel files and I've got this company humming. Well, maybe that's the right solution, maybe it's not, but those kind of people are what you're looking for. You're looking for the people that really want to make a difference in the organization, and they're kind of the troublemakers in the organization. They're always stirring something up. Those are your individuals that you want to try to pull into the project and make them key inside of the group. The other thing is think about those that are complaining the loudest. Sometimes you go into an organization and you begin talking with the people, and it's those that are really complaining about the things that are happening, and those that are talking about what could be different, and what if we did it this way, and what if we did it that way. Those kind of people are really important that you pull them into the project as well, because you have to solve their problems. You have to make sure that you're getting them engaged to really be able to pull this in. So this actually comes from a process. This kind of diagram comes from a process called EOS. It's also some foundational principles that are in the book called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. If you haven't read that, I would highly encourage you to read it. Some of the next principles we're going to talk about are just key to some of the things that are in the book. And I think you'll really like that book and kind of how it shows you how to assemble a great team and what to look for. But every single project needs the following components. Every project needs a visionary. And that visionary is the person that can come up with 1,000 new ideas every single day, and 999 of them are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. They are just not even close to what the goal of the project is, but they're ideas, and they are amazing at coming up with new ideas all the time. However, this person, if left unchecked, will actually create dysfunction in the project. They will create so many change orders that you may not even be able to manage budget, you may not be able to keep the timeline on track, you'll just have a lot of issues. So you need the visionary, you need that person that comes up with all the ideas in the project team. They're typically your project champions. A lot of times they're in leadership positions. They could even be one of the owners of the company a lot of times, because that same visionary spirit inside of a project team is also the same visionary spirit that will kind of spin up and help start companies. So a lot of times you'll find that this person has a lot of authority. They will also a lot of times have a lot of say in an organization, but they can also disrupt things very quickly. So that's why it's so important to have this next person on the list. This next person in the project team, you're looking for someone that is an integrator. So an integrator is a person who really gets their energy and their passion not necessarily from coming up with new ideas, but taking the ideas from someone else, their visionary, and taking those and put them into action. You're looking for a person who just loves lists. They love checking things off their list. They love kind of making sure everything's organized. Those are the kind of people that you're looking for your integrator. And you want to make sure that they know that their job is to keep that visionary in check for the project. It's going to be critical that you have those new ideas, but it's also going to be really critical that your integrator can kind of take those ideas, filter through them, and come up with the ones that we're going to do and all the ones that are going to go on a backlog or on some other type of structure. So if you're doing things agile, this is where your visionary is great at building a backlog, but your integrator is the one typically that is saying, okay, this is what we can actually do in this sprint, this is what we can't do at all, and this is what we can just move forward with. So you got to try to find that person. It's probably the most important role in the project because you will not be successful if you have a project that's run by a visionary. Many times we've seen this so much that the visionary kind of steps in and takes control, and without an integrator, you will go over budget. You'll be doing things that you didn't intend to do in the project. You'll have out of scope things. You'll have change orders like crazy. It just goes into chaos when you have a visionary that is left on his own devices. Now, sometimes that visionary and integrator can be the same person. It doesn't necessarily have to be two separate individuals always, but showing this slide and actually building the team structure specific to the way that we're outlining here will help the visionary to recognize when he's in visionary mode and will then help him recognize when he needs to be an integrator for himself, to step back and say, okay, you've come up with enough new ideas now. Let's actually get some of the ones that you've come up with done based on the highest priority items first. So then under your visionary and integrator, then you've got all of your different project teams. So this could be a sales and marketing, could be customer service, finance, field service, whatever the different teams are that you're working with inside of an organization based on the industry. And so those specific team members will always be critical to determining the requirements, making sure that the details of what it is that needs to be accomplished are accurately communicated to the business teams. These individuals also can be like your SMEs or your product owners that can help gather those requirements, take them back to the business units and say, I need you to get me more detail on X, Y, and Z. These are your key individuals for ensuring that the true requirements of the project are solved. So you've got to have individual that you have identified decision makers for each department. You have to identify a decision maker for the entire project. And then you also have to ensure that you have that integrator role to really make sure that the project ticks well. So kind of coming up with those core project team is going to be one of the most important things you do before you ever start the project. And finally, kind of to wrap all of that up, as you assemble the project team, don't just look for people that are in those C-level positions. Look for people downstream that can really drive the results of the project. It's not always your key leaders in an organization that are going to fill these roles. You have to look for the right people, those disruptors, those people that are complainers in the organization. Those are going to be the ones that will really help drive change. So number 4, after you've built an amazing team, right? You've picked your integrator, you've selected kind of who the visionary is, you understand what everybody's roles are, and then you've communicated that out. The next step is number 4. And number 4 is letting go of the rope. So after you've built an amazing team, you want to empower them to make decisions. And the challenge is as consultants, sometimes we don't have full control over this part of the project. Sometimes this is something we have to really try to coach the business teams and the decision makers in the organization to make sure that they understand that they need to let go of the rope. So there's so many ways that people are kind of engaged with a project, especially from a leadership team perspective, but the key there is to make sure that they trust the people that are going to be executing the vision of the visionary. So once you've selected the right people, you've got to make sure and give them the reins so that way they can do the project. If you've trusted them enough to put them in the leadership team, this is kind of what I coach our people on. If you've trusted them enough to put them in the leadership team, then you've trusted them enough to be able to empower them to make decisions. Now, are they going to get everything right? Are they always going to execute the exact vision of the visionary? Oh my goodness, no, not at all. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to fall down. But unless you empower them to make the decisions and then stand behind them when they do, there's no way that they're going to be able to learn. This new wave of citizen developers that's coming up, it's causing old dogs like me to have to really let go of this rope. This rope sometimes is the IT infrastructure. It's the IT managers. It's the IT departments that are in an organization. And these citizen developers are really causing us to have to let go of the rope. And this is hard for me. It's taken me a while to kind of get to this point where I truly understand what the makers, the Power App makers, and the citizen developers are going to be able to do inside of an organization. We're so worried about them making mistakes that sometimes I feel like we're cutting their legs out from under them, because those things are what's going to empower them to truly make a difference inside of a company. So if you've put them on the leadership team, you've trusted them, you've given them delegated authority, you've given them the ability to kind of make those decisions on their own, then let them do it. And if they fall down, then you pull them aside one-on-one and make corrections to those things. Don't ever correct them in front of that project team, because you'll cut their legs out from under them, and then no one will actually trust their decision-making abilities anymore. I mean, they'll question the decisions they make inside the organization. It will just not end well. So make sure that's done one-on-one with the individual. If you need to make a correction, make sure that you're pulling them aside saying, hey, next time, whenever you go to the business teams to gather the requirements, make sure you're doing X, Y, Z, and make that correction one-on-one with them. You'll never succeed as a team unless you've got some people that are willing to let go of the rope. It is going to be the most important thing as we progress more into this Power Apps world, for the people to be able to empower the individuals in the project team and in the organization to let go of the rope. So I would encourage you, these kind of high-level things we've just talked about, be having these conversations with the customer up front in the project. Make sure that you've got buy-in from them to be able to establish the project team and empower them to truly make the decisions. Number 5, set measurable and attainable goals. You have got to understand what the end result of the project is. There is no way that the project is going to be successful unless you start out by focusing on what are the key things that we want to achieve in the project. As an example, we want to eliminate all dual entry between these two systems. That could be a requirement, right? We want to reduce the time that it takes to log a customer service ticket by 30 seconds. That is very specific. It's measurable and it's attainable. This is what we have to do to get there, and here's how we will know when we got there. Another one, create one form that everybody in the company can view all of the data about a customer. That could be a really specific requirement, and I've heard that one so many times that I can't even count that ends up being the requirement. But unless you start with the goal in mind, you'll begin architecting incorrectly. You'll gather requirements incorrectly. There's no direction for that project team that you've built. So once you begin planning the project, before you kick it off, make sure you've got clear, measurable, and attainable goals for what the overall success of the project is. That'll ensure that your leadership team is on point. It'll ensure that your business team members are all gathering the right requirements. It'll just make sure that everybody is looking at what the long-term vision is from that visionary, more than it is thinking about how do I make sure and fit in all the problems that I want to solve into this same project. Every project should have very clear, measurable, and attainable goals that everyone's looking at as the North Star for how that they guide the project. And that's the way you start the project. I mean, you've got to begin by thinking about those things. Eliminating entry between two systems is a great one. Reducing customer service clicks to log a ticket by 10 clicks or 30 seconds. And I want to create one form to view everything from a customer. Just some examples for you guys to think about. Begin thinking about these things as you go through. So we're going to kind of make a bit of a transition now. So we talked about what you do at the beginning of the project. Let's talk more now about what you do during the project. So you've got the project kicked off, things are going well, some things are maybe not going so well. Now what? You've got some good requirements, you're beginning to build the system, but just sometimes things don't always go exactly as planned. So what happens whenever things go wrong? You can sometimes get into these release cycles and sprints and design meetings, and they can be stressful, and people's emotions can get really high. They can lose focus of what the goals were. They can lose focus of who's being empowered to make decisions. So just consistently reminding them about these key factors are going to really ensure that your project is successful. So let's talk about what some of the things are, what happens whenever things go wrong. First thing that typically happens is you blame the previous partner or consultant. Well, it was probably the last consultant, they set up the system all wrong. They had our business units all messed up, and man, look at all these security roles and workflows. I'm sure they messed something up, right? That's kind of the first step that you start to see when things aren't going well, is they blame the previous partner. Sometimes that happens at the very beginning of the project as well. That could be the reason why that the customer's looking to make a change in general. And so those types of things and those types of conversations are key things to watch out for. Guess what? Most partners out there are pretty good. I mean, there's some ones that do some things that I wonder what they're thinking, but not very many. And most of them are making key decisions based on the requirements they have and building a system that will work for the customer. So if you have a customer that's struggling with user adoption and they say that it's all the previous partner or consultant's fault, that should be a red flag to you. You should really be looking at that and saying, maybe there's something not well with this customer. Maybe something's not healthy in their organization, because probably not always the previous partner's fault. Second thing that happens, they begin to blame the person who had the job before them. So when things start to go wrong, they start looking at all of the individuals that had the previous job role, and they say, well, they had their processes all mixed up, or they weren't doing things the right way. Well, there's probably reasons why that person was doing things the way they were doing them. Maybe not the right decisions. Maybe there's some technology that they could have been using different to help facilitate some of that. But still, to say that every single thing is the previous person's fault is a recipe for disaster. There's reasons why they're doing it, and you're probably overlooking some very key things in the organization if you just simply gloss over the fact that it's all the previous person's fault. Once things really start getting going and you've got some things that are going bad, the next step is blame the vendor that was selected. Well, I knew that we should have went with Salesforce. If we would have went for Salesforce, we wouldn't have been having all these problems. Or if we would have just selected Sales Logics or some other system, man, we just wouldn't be having these issues. Man, that's just not true. There's so much stuff out there. Salesforce and Dynamics, as far as their platform is concerned, have some major differences. But from a pure software standpoint and what they can do out of the box, there's a lot of parity. So to just simply say it's the software's fault, we should have picked Salesforce or we should have picked Dynamics, is probably really glossing over some major issues in the organization. So don't take that as an answer. Dig deeper when you start hearing that. Well, why didn't Salesforce work for you? Understanding kind of questions about, well, what do you think would have been different if you would have went to Dynamics instead of Salesforce? Some of those questions may really unlock what some of the root cause is of some of this organization headaches. So blame the vendor, blame the software. All of those are kind of those key next steps that you start to see whenever you've got serious problems going on in an organization. Stress gets high, budgets get low, all of those things kind of begin to feed at each other, and then you end up having some major issues. But guess what? The problem is probably you. That's probably really the problem. It's probably not the previous partner or consultant. It's probably not the person who had the job before you. It's probably not the software, and it's probably not the vendor. The problem is probably the organization. And I think if you can really set this in stone from the very beginning, and these are really hard conversations to have sometimes, and sometimes you need a third-party person to come in and have this conversation, and we'll talk more about that in a little while. But these kind of conversations with the customer are sometimes what is going to be critical to the success of a project. Otherwise, they're just going to end up implementing the same system in a different piece of software, and it's going to function exactly the same, and they're going to have the same user adoption challenges if they don't fix the underlying root cause of the problem. But don't let this frustration spill into the users. All this frustration that happens through the course of a project and on the leadership team, keep it in that leadership team level. Do not let that spill over into the users. Because if the questioning of the software and the questioning of the consultants and the questioning of the vendors, if all of that begins to happen, then guess what happens? The users then have an excuse and they begin to lose confidence in the project as a whole. And then all the other things that you did before the project just go by the wayside because they're no longer excited because you've given them a reason to opt out. So even when these things get challenging, and they will, in almost every project they will get challenging, don't let that spill into the user base, because as soon as you do, you have to reset and you have to do some things different, because otherwise you will have lost your users and you probably won't get them back as it relates to that project. Number 7, create a war room atmosphere. So certainly in the post-COVID environment, these war rooms have turned more into Zoom meetings and Microsoft Team meetings and those kind of things. But don't get away from having those conversations with your customers. Don't let the lack of availability to go on site hinder you from being really connected with the people that you're working with. That type of personal connection is foundational to us as humans. It's foundational to us building relationships with people. These are people in these jobs. This is not just a system. It's not just a piece of software you're putting in place. This is somebody's livelihood. This is somebody's way that they're taking care of their family. These are people's jobs we're talking about. These are systems and companies that help employ millions of people. We want to make sure that we're doing the best work for them, and the way you do that is by being super connected with them as a person. And these war room type atmospheres will really help do that. We used to do a lot of war room type atmospheres in person, and we're starting to move more of that into Microsoft Teams. I know no one likes a 4-hour meeting, but sometimes you need a 4-hour meeting to solve the problems, especially when things start to go wrong in the project. All those things we just talked about in step number 6, where you're starting to blame things and you're starting to see those signs that this project could be kind of going off the rails a bit. All of those kind of things should drive you right into a war room where you begin to look at the project team in the eye to be able to ask what's going on and get down into the root of the problem with the project. Also, we use this same type of war room atmosphere whenever it comes to testing. So during our user acceptance testing, doing like some sort of a conference room pilot type program, all of those things can be really good ways to then get that user involvement throughout the project. Not only the leadership team, but also now pulling in other users and other business team members into this war room atmosphere so that way you can test, you can train, you can do all of those things. But the more you get this war room started from the beginning, the more that it will be natural and comfortable as you progress through the project, and it won't be a foreign thing. You'll all know each other, everyone will feel comfortable with each other, and you'll just have a much better personal relationship. It's a good thing and a bad thing, but we have consultants sometimes that become so a part of an organization that the organization forgets that they're even consultants. I mean, they treat them more like their employees, and some of the most invaluable employees that they have. And so that type of relationship is what you're looking for. That one-on-one connection has to be had during the implementation for the project to be successful. And that's between consultant and customer. It's internal between customer team members. All of those things have to happen for the project to be successful. So guess what? Number 8, throw another party. So as you can tell, I like parties. It doesn't have to be a crazy, really expensive party. You could just bring in pizza for the office and give an announcement about we're going live next weekend. Whatever that is, make it exciting. The more users that you can get excited about this new system, the better that they will feel about change. Change is hard. Change is extremely difficult for people. And don't forget about the personal part of it. But it's hard to be too critical about a party. So turn it into a party. Every single go live of a project that you do, it doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be a giant kickoff party with confetti and a live band. But it could just be something simple to get people excited about it. To go along with that kickoff in the beginning, making sure that you're doing things, all of that. The other part I want to touch on as a part of the party atmosphere is doing something like a newsletter. So as an example, you could be taking photos during the party, take photos during those war room sessions, take photos of your whiteboard as you're beginning to design things, all of those kind of things, put them in a newsletter. Send out some sort of a monthly newsletter on what's happening with the project, along with your, here we are with budget and here's the things left to do. Also include some of those fun things as a part of that as well. And that's really going to help lighten the load and ease that anxiety of change that's going to happen with an organization. Number 9, let's talk about this. So we're ready to go live. Day of go live comes along. We've went live with the system. Everything's great. Customers up and running. Users have been trained. Documentation has been presented. Training videos recorded. All of that has happened. Well, we're all done. It's time for the consultants to leave and go home, right? No, absolutely not. This is when our work starts. Like, we need to be setting up recurring touch points with the users, setting up those various quarterly health checks with the customers, starting to do something around labs where we're working with customers to come up with new ideas about the next step of the project. All of those things are the next step, and they are the most important part of the project. So you've planned up front, you've then designed, you've built, and now what you're doing is you're flowing straight through to now what's next. As a consultant, this turns into your next set of work that you want to do, and that's great. But from a customer standpoint, this turns into caring. I really care about the project because we're going to be checking up with you. We're going to be doing those quarterly health assessments. All of those kind of things are things that you can put in place so easy to help that user adoption help. If you feel the adoption start to slip away again, and sometimes this happens, people are really good for the first few weeks. They're gung-ho, they're using the system, salespeople are entering their opportunities and activities. It's awesome, and then kind of things start to slip back to normal. The excitement's worn off. The party's no longer a party anymore. Now it's just something that you gotta do as a job. Well, that's okay, but make sure that you do those resets. Hard reset those projects and make sure that the decisions that were made, you reiterate those. Let's talk about what the original goals were, and let's talk about how we solved them or how we didn't solve them. In some of those instances, you may have things that you need to circle back on and fix, and that's fine. But don't let those complainers and those troublemakers that we talked about from the beginning, don't let those come back now and turn negative against your project. Pull them in, let's fix the things that they are accomplishing, that they want to see accomplished, but let's make sure that we're doing it in a way that is the clear-cut vision of the project. Don't just be taking all the complainers' lists and just making a change order out of it. It has to follow the vision, it has to follow the project team's key deliverables, and it needs to fit inside of the scope of what it is that we're doing. Otherwise, it's a new project, and we start all over, and we throw a new party and gather new requirements. So think about it, listen to them, but make sure that sometimes you're just there to be a therapist, to be honest. You're there to listen to the customer's issues. You're there to hear what they have to say. You don't need to fix anything. You just need to listen. And sometimes that's our role, and sometimes that's what those quarterly health checks turn into, is more of a session about us just listening to what they have to say more than it is us actually doing anything. So number 10, let's talk about this for just a minute. We've planned, we've implemented, we've done all this cool stuff. We've thrown 2 parties now, if you're keeping track. And we've got the users using the system. Yeah, some things have gone wrong, but for the most part, everybody's using the system in a good way. So what happens when people don't use it? Well, it still is a chance of it occurring even after you've done all this hard work to ensure that people are adopting it, that they're using it in the right way. There's still a chance that you just have some individuals that just don't adopt. So how do we get that to happen? Well, natural adoption is always the best. It involves communication, motivating the right behavior in your people, but sometimes people just don't adapt to that natural motivation. So that's where we begin falling back to some of the positive and negative reinforcement methods to make those changes happen. And this is also where most people begin talking about user adoption. You notice we're all the way on slide 10. This is generally where people start talking about it, right? They start talking about the carrot and the stick approach to the presentation. And so as a part of that, we can't start here. We needed to have started all the way back at the beginning at number 1. So that way when we get here, we're only dealing with a handful of individuals rather than the entire organization. So what do we do whenever these types of things happen? Well, let's talk about it. We have the carrot approach. So how do we incentivize them to use the system if they're just not doing it? We can offer money or swag or some sort of a benefit to them. I've seen people do laptop cases or branded sweaters or branded jackets, anything like that. You offer swag in order to benefit the behavior. So as an example, I need you to enter your activities. So therefore, the person with the most activities this week is going to get that prize. Or this quarter, maybe they're going to get a specific bonus, that sort of thing. Whatever incentive that you're trying to make sure it's short term. That way they can see quick results and link that to the behavior you want to tie. And then also make sure that from a behavior standpoint that you're giving things that incentivize the correct behavior. You don't want to give an incentive that ends up backfiring on you and people are just tracking every email because they get a bonus on it. Instead, you want to incentivize the behavior of tracking the right emails. So make sure you're thinking about that when you structure any of your games or any of the other things that you're going to be doing. Also, management's going to have visibility into your work. So you're not going to have to provide a completely separate set of reports to your management. This is a lot of times a really nice benefit. You know, instead of you going in and filling out that Excel file every single week where you're telling me what your pipeline is, instead, the sales manager is just going to log into Dynamics and it's going to pull up the dashboard and all of the data is going to be there. Those kind of incentives also can really help motivate behavior where some of the other things may not have worked. And if none of that works, sometimes we have to go to the stick approach with certain individuals. And that is, you're going to be in trouble if you don't make your calls. You're going to be in trouble if you don't log your activities. You're going to be in trouble if you don't update your opportunities before the sales meeting. Those kind of things are a little bit more forceful. It requires a very special personality, someone in authority to be able to accomplish that and make it work. But sometimes it is the only way to get the type of behavior that you're looking to get. It doesn't exist if it's not in Dynamics 365. That is definitely one of those negative reinforcement things. I am not even going to talk to you about this lead unless you've logged it in Dynamics. Those kind of things from a management perspective will drive people to enter it in, but it should be used as a last resort. And finally, run your meetings from D365. Like, we're going to be sitting down in the sales meeting and I'm going to open up D365 and I'm going to open up the sales app. We're going to be looking at the pipeline right inside of the system. So if you didn't enter it, it's not there. We're not even talking about your stuff if it's not in. Those kind of things are tools that you can use, but man, they should be a last resort. And most of the time, this is where people start talking about user adoption, is what do we do different to either incentivize or correct behavior that we don't like? Well, if you're getting to this point, you're getting so far along that it's really difficult to come back. And a lot of times there needs to be change with those individuals in the organization to really make people realize the seriousness of the behavior you're trying to change. So don't get to this point. Start from the beginning, so that way when you get here, you're only dealing with a really small set of individuals that still won't give you the user adoption and the access that they need into your information. All right, so we're going to switch gears just a little bit. And so when I say switch gears, we're going to talk a little bit more now about more personality stuff. So we've talked about the 10 things that you can do to help drive user adoption. The next thing that I want to spend some time on is some more tactics that are going to work on different types of personalities that will really help you to be able to take time with your people, understand what works for them, understand what motivates them, so that way you can build the system that they cannot stop using. So we're switching onto a little bit more about system things and how you motivate behavior now. So we're going to talk about the sales personality, we're going to talk about a marketing personality, and we're going to talk about a customer service personality. Now, I will give you a fair warning. I am going to be talking in extreme generalities right now. I completely realize that you can have totally different personalities working in each one of these departments. You may have someone in marketing that certainly does not fit the mold of a marketing personality. You may have somebody in customer service that's an amazing customer service person, but they really have more of the personality of a sales person. Those kind of things are what I'm going to be making broad generalities about right now. So what I'm going to say, take it with a grain of salt, but know that I want to try to encourage you to think about people as people in a different way, more than thinking about just one system that everybody should just use. And so sometimes it is different based on a person, on how you interact with them to get them to adopt into a new system. So the key thing to remember is everything that you give them, make sure everything you're going to ask them for, make sure you're giving them something in return. So as an example, if I'm going to ask you to enter in all of your opportunities, make sure you're giving them some sort of a report that would help them. A great example of this, we just did this for a client not too long ago, was something called a predictive sales commission report. So we're asking you to enter in all of your activities and all of your opportunities and leads. But what we're going to give you is we're going to give you the ability to do predictive sales commission. So you can see a Power BI dashboard that's going to tell you what you could make next quarter if you continue on the trends that you're on now. Those kind of things will incentivize the right behavior in the sales personality. So in the sales personality, they're very competitive. So the sales personality they thrive on competition with other sales reps. It is crazy to me how sometimes they will work harder for a $5 gift card or a free lunch than they will to get a $10,000 bonus. It is crazy how competitive that personality is. I'm sure everyone here kind of knows this person and knows this personality, but think about it. This is the person that on the highway when they're driving, they're in competition with the car next to them every single time they get on the road. I need to get where I'm going faster. I want to ensure that I get to my destination before everyone else. Like that sort of competition, it's in all of their life. It's not even just at work. Like these sorts of personality types are driven on competition. So take that and use it. Make sure that you are creating some very specific language in your competitions that you give them that help drive that behavior. As an example, make sure that you are in the top X, or showing them how that they are in the top certain percentage of their peers. Talking to them about how that their opportunities make up X percentage of the pipeline. Giving them hard numbers so that they can see how they're doing in comparison to the rest of the organization will truly be that motivator that this type of personality needs to change behavior and start adopting a system in a more natural way. Also, the sales personality typically loves individual recognition. They love that personal kudos. You did a great job. Thank you so much for that opportunity. Man, you nailed it on that one. Those kind of feedback in public will really boost their morale, and you will not have as much trouble getting them to adopt a system if they know they're going to get recognition for what it is that they do in that system. So kind of structuring things in a way so that way you've got that kind of recognition will really help with the sales personality. The other thing, territory ownership. Again, they're competitive, right? We've already talked about that. But the ability to maybe give them ownership of a territory. As an example, if you do really good in the next 2 quarters, I'm going to give you this extra set of territory that you can then use. Or we're going to incentivize you by giving you an extra part of the country. to be able to go prospect, or an extra set of prospects, or maybe a new product line. Whatever it is that you can incentivize them, something else for them to compete at is what they're looking for. So I've got this other thing I can compete at, but now you're offering me new competitions that I can get involved with. That sometimes can really, really motivate behavior. And finally, that predictive analytics that we talked about. Show them what could happen if. Those kind of things really stirs up those competitive juices and gets them to a point where they want to compete, whenever they know what they can achieve. Those kind of things will really help you motivate the sales personality. But it doesn't have to be any competitive game, or it doesn't have to be gamification or anything like that. It is amazing to me what someone will do for a reserved parking place. It is crazy to me what college kids will do for a free t-shirt, right? That same personality flows through a lot of times into sales and some of their personal life, but man, a reserved parking place gives them that public recognition they're looking for. It also gives them an incentive to work for. It shows their peers that they have won the competition. Those kind of things will motivate behavior more than some of the other things that we've talked about will ever do. And so look for those ways. Look for those reserved parking spot approaches to the way that you're incentivizing behavior. So then also, how do we promote it? That is key. So once they have achieved success, how do we promote this inside of the organization? A sales dashboard that's visible by everyone in the company is a great way to do it. Show the rest of the company how they're doing. That's key. Public praise within the company, lifting them up, kind of showing the rest of the company how appreciative you are for the things that they've done will really motivate this personality type. And also have those results available in a public place, whether it's a screen that you have mounted in sort of a break room area that's constantly looping through who the top sales performers are, something like that that's displayed in a public area where everyone can see it, can really make the difference in the way that that ego and the competitive nature of the sales personality gets incentivized. Also, gamification. I know everyone has probably heard of and have tried to implement some kind of gamification in the systems, but don't overthink this strategy. Keep it simple and try your best to capitalize on the motivation. So it doesn't have to be a software. I know there's some fantasy sales team software that you could use. There's a lot of other products out there that kind of do that gamification, but it could just be a simple dashboard or a workflow that any time that somebody saves a record that's based on this, maybe it adds a record to an entity and you're just looking at that entity. Keep it simple. The simpler the game, the more you'll get people to use it. If you make it overly complex and difficult to report on, you're making something that's counterproductive to what it is you're trying to do. You can use badges and levels and points, give them awards for the different things that they achieve as a part of that game. Airlines do this all the time, right? I mean, I fly American Airlines all the time because of the miles. It really doesn't have that much to do with the overall experience, although I certainly prefer some airlines over another. It doesn't have that much to do with it. It has to do with those miles. And if I was to look back at what those miles actually get me and how much money they actually save me, I probably would be shocked. But there's something about that incentive that really gets people to use a certain competitive edge. This is something retail has been doing. This is something that a lot of people have been doing with membership incentives and some sort of incentive programs to be able to boost your user base. All of those things can be used in your organization as well. The key thing to remember about a game, though, if you're going to implement some sort of a gamification, is make sure you can reset the game. Don't have long games that drag on for a really long time because your people will be frustrated and feel like they can never get ahead. So make sure they're short games, that you have the ability to hit reset because you need the ability to get new players on the board. You also need to be able to just reset and allow people to win. If they can't win, if they see no hope for winning, then your game is really not going to achieve the results that you want it to achieve. And then some other things you can do is you can use themed games. You could do a Monopoly themed game or a Star Wars themed game, baseball themed game, football, all of those kind of things you can use as incentives because sometimes bringing it into the real world will really help those incentives work. So we're going to switch gears just a little bit, and let's talk about customer service. What works and what doesn't work for the customer service personality. So again, talking in generalities here, I realize that, but the customer service personality is not the sales personality. They are not driven as much on competition, and they're not driven as much on statistics and seeing what they could achieve. Instead, what they're generally focused on is more about quality instead of quantity. That personality, the customer service personality, is looking at how good of a job am I doing? Am I meeting the customer's expectations? Am I meeting my boss's expectations? They kind of constantly want that validation that, yes, I'm doing a good job. Yes, you're doing what I've expected you to do. That reinforcement is really what this customer service personality is looking for. As an example, you could have some sort of a stat that is who has the highest rated knowledge base articles. Not the number of articles, that would be more of your sales personality, right? I want to know if I've got the best, the most articles out there. Customer service is more motivated based on the highest quality of customer service article. As an example, who's reading them the most? Who's interacting with them the most on the website? Those kind of statistics could really help that motivation. You can also do a public board for customer service. Public recognition is still a really good thing. It does drive that behavior that you're looking for. But use total scores rather than individual scores. So sales would be motivated more by that individual recognition and that individual scoring, whereas the customer service personality is going to be motivated more by how am I doing as a team, or how is the overall customer service department doing. Again, you want to lift up the entire group rather than lifting up the individual with a customer service personality. Not necessarily a leaderboard like sales, still public, but more about position. So you can use incentives such as, wow, I really like your feedback. The quality of work that you're providing to our customers is just incredible. You're solving every customer's problem. You're doing a great job. I think you'd be a really good fit on the leadership team. Maybe the next project we have, we should put you on that team to help advise us on what those systems should look like. That is more of a motivator for customer service than it is for anybody else. And finally, surveys of the customers. The customer service personality loves the survey of the customers because it gives them that validation on how am I doing. Otherwise, how do they know whether they're doing a good job? Yes, you can hear it from your manager, but there's nothing like hearing from a customer that you're doing a great job. And I love working with you. Every time I call in, I can just hear the smile in your voice. Every time I call in, you're so willing to help me solve my problems. Those kind of things will drive the customer service personality into an amazing level of user adoption and into an amazing level of performance. So, as a part of the customer service personality, again, the things you're tracking and the things you're doing, the badges, so to speak, that you're giving them are slightly different than the way that you would do it for sales. So how do you measure a customer service personality? Well, first, it's all about craftsmanship. Are they doing a great job at what it is that they're assigned to do or what it is that they do? You can measure this by saying highest rated knowledge base articles, the most blogs read, some sort of a quarterly measurement of how you track those things. All those are great ways of showing them that they're doing a good job. Top quality is also another amazing way to show them that they're doing a good job. So not just about craftsmanship, but the highest rated customer satisfaction scores, the monthly cadence of being able to say, here's what your customers think about you. All of those things are just a great way to be able to incentivize the customer service personality. So let's talk about the marketing personality for a second. Marketing personality is not the same as customer service, and it's certainly not the same as the sales personality, but there's different ways that you have to look at behavior and kind of how you can help them to be motivated to use new systems and overall kind of increase their adoption level. So let's talk a little bit about marketing. Marketing's core motivator is helping them to see the end result of what it is that they do every day. So many times they get caught up in the endless cycle of blogs and website revisions and social media and writing new articles and publishing press releases and all the things that goes into the marketing job. running advertising, all of those things that they really don't ever get to see the end result of their labor. All of the things that they're doing every day, how is that equating to revenue in the company? How's that equating to new sales in the sales department? How's that equating to a better customer service experience? So helping them see the end result of what it is that they do every day is going to be a huge motivator for helping them to adopt new systems. The other thing is just full circle marketing. So how do we take customers that have decided they don't want to work with us anymore, or customers that have maybe not purchased recently, how do we take those and put them back into the marketing funnel? Those sorts of things will really help illustrate to them how valuable they are within the organization. Also, tracking campaign costs. So they can also be very driven based on financial results. So marketing kind of has that part of sales, a competitive part of them, but theirs is more about how much can I do, how much benefit can I give with the least amount of money. So creating some metrics around campaign costs and helping them really understand the cost per lead, all of those kind of things will really help drive adoption in whatever system it is that you're implementing for them. But they're incentivized sometimes based on the maximization of their budget more than about number of leads generated and number of calls that sales has been able to make from the leads they give. All of those kind of things that you might look at from a marketing perspective, those are not necessarily the correct incentive. Sometimes it's maximization of budget. It's more about how much did this campaign cost and trying to lower that cost as much as possible. Those kind of things will be a motivator. But also just overall ROI on an opportunity. How much did it cost to get this lead? How much did we make on the opportunity? And how much money did you, marketing, generate for the organization? So sales had some cost, marketing has some cost, maybe delivery or your engineering team may have some cost in an organization. What are all those, and how does it equate to the total ROI of an opportunity? Those kind of metrics can really be key to showing them their value, because sometimes marketing feels like that they are not necessarily the most valuable part of an organization. So you have to show them where the value is. And financially, we all know that obviously marketing is one of the biggest impacts that you can make on a revenue of a company, is how those marketing efforts generate leads. But showing them what that end result look like will really help drive the user adoption. So what kind of metrics do you look at with the marketing personality? Well, Busy Bee. Busy Bee is a good one. So this is something that marketing teams have used for years. So it's the highest buzz on a campaign, the most clicks on a blog article, the amount of time someone's read their blog article or watched a video that they've published. All of those kind of things show how much interaction that they're getting, and that really drives them to that user adoption level. And you can do some of the same things internal of your company. So publishing videos, have marketing actually publish their own videos internally about what the company's doing, what the vision of the company is. Those kind of things will really help build their self-worth and help them to understand how valuable they truly are to the organization. Also, the most beloved. So how many social media responses are you getting on your posts? How many number of followers are you getting inside of the marketing department? Those kind of things will really, again, kind of help boost that value to an organization. And then just overall recognition. The key with marketing is not so much about individual recognition within the company as much as it is about public outside of the company. So social media campaigns. You can do a social media campaign that's about your marketing department. Here's the cool things that our marketing department's doing. A video showing kind of them at work. Those kind of things outside of the company, published on any social media platform, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is you're using for those platforms to communicate, can really help marketing kind of feel that warm and fuzzy value. Also, a press release to your partners or vendors, showing them marketing's work. Take a look at this amazing case study that marketing has put out. You send that out to your customers and vendors. That gives them some of that external recognition that will really help boost your user adoption level. Also, company website. Have something about your marketing team on your company website. Make sure that they're getting that recognition outside of the company that they really want. And then also department-based. So how is the entire department doing? that kind of praise inside of the department and inside of your company can be great. So congratulations to the marketing department for earning the highest number of badges in company history this quarter. Those kind of announcements going out to the company about the marketing team or the marketing department can really, really help them see the value in what the systems are that you're putting in place. So we've talked a lot today about the different ways that you can drive user adoption, the different personality types and kind of how you motivate them. I want to say thank you so much for you guys spending the time, letting me ramble for a long time. I could talk for hours about this kind of stuff. We're just barely scratching the surface on some of the things that you can do with user adoption. And I really hope that you take some of these ideas and put them into practice right now. You can begin to do it. It's never too late to start. If it's an existing project that's underway, begin to do some of those things. Publish a newsletter about the project. Whatever those things are that you can begin to do right away, do them. And then really begin thinking about this as you start new projects. There should not be a single project that you do going forward that does not have some kind of user adoption practices in it. And also, if you need help with any of this stuff, I'm certainly not the expert on this area. There's so many of our peers and colleagues that could offer some of this great same advice, and many of them do on LinkedIn, and follow them on Instagram, that sort of thing, that they really publish a lot of cool videos around it. Just do some searching on user adoption to better educate yourself. But I am here if you need some help. So if you do need my help, I'm more than willing to jump on a call, to respond to some emails. You can check me out on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, all of those platforms. You can follow me, follow our organization, and we'd be more than happy to help you with any of those things that you may have. We also do run these sorts of user adoption workshops for customers. So if you would like to bring us in as kind of that first part of a project, we can help run this sort of user adoption workshop. It's typically a day long. We start with a very similar presentation to this and then kind of flow into more team building and some team alignment activities. So some of those things could really be awesome when you first kick off a project to start with some user adoption training. If you'd like a copy of the slides or if you want my contact information, scan this QR code. I'm going to leave this slide up for a few minutes so that way you can scan that with your phone. Fill out the quick form that'll give us your contact information. I'll make sure you personally get a copy of the presentation, and then I will also send you an email with my contact information in case you need anything at all. Thank you so much. I'm going to step back over to my desk here in just a second, and we're going to open it up for some question and answers inside of the chat, and I'll be more than happy to respond to any questions that you guys have. I'll see you in a second.